What can product people learn from this? If like me, you started your career working on digital products, then you probably miss a whole chapter about how people are building and crafting physical products. This is often referred as industrial design. It's easy to forget, but before products were only physical, digital means they're 2 dimensions. So usually we interact with our hands, with our fingers. 3 dimensions, we can interact with the full body, whether it's our feet, our back, our hips. In that sense, they're a lot more holistic. Pioneers of industrial design like Dieter Rams from Braun or Johnny Ive from Apple are just the tipping point of the iceberg. There's just so much more we can learn from industrial design. And today I'm going to share 5 rules of industrial design that every product person can learn from. Let's dive in. Rule number 1, designing for the people by Henry Dreyfus. He's famous for having crafted some of the most iconic devices in Americans' homes and offices across the 20th centuries, such as the Western Electric Model 500 phone, the Westclock's Big Ben alarm clock, or the Honeywell round thermostat. Dreyfus was probably the first one to see the value of what we currently call the user experience. He said, if the point of contact between the product and the people becomes a point of friction, then the industrial designer has failed. If, on the other hand, people are made safer, more comfortable, more efficient, or just plain happier, then the designer has succeeded. Dreyfus and his teams were using Joe and Josephine, who were lines drawings of a man and a woman, to always keep in mind the purpose of their designs. Every time they designed something new, they were testing against the real models of these people. They would then create some working prototypes to put them in the hands of the clients to make sure that the interactions were smooth. If the product was to be packaged, then the design team would also have to design the box, the price tag, the cardboard. Dreyfus was famous because he thought really holistically about the experience. He even once designed the truck that was delivering some of the goods. Dreyfus was obsessed with the concept of packaging. He saw it as the ultimate way to store goods and to display them in the shops. He was also aware of the concept of unboxing, which is the hallmark of so many great companies like Apple these days. Okay, so how can we software people apply that? What we can do is think end to end about our user experience. There are a couple of great frameworks like the journey mapping, where you can really map the emotions and the touch point that people have with your brand. Rule number 2, form follows function, from the Bauhaus. The Bauhaus was a German art school from 1919 to 1933. It became very famous because it tried to unify the artistic individual visions with the principles of mass productions and the emphasis on the function. The Bauhaus school rejected the purely ornamental role that they felt visual art had acquired, and they strove for a purely rational approach to design. In their place, the Bauhaus school required the students to enhance the functions of an object without adding any decorative elements. You can really tell this minimalism and rationalism in Joseph Albert's nesting tables, for instance. Alright, so in software, that means that the shape of something already communicates something about it. I think there's 3 great examples. First is the left sidebar in the SaaS. It's like a glossary. I want to know roughly what I'm going to be able to navigate. A big button, the behavior it suggests us is I want that thing now. The big button to Shazam a song, it means I want the name of the song now. If you're using Google Voice, it means transcript my voice now into text. The last example I like is the swipe. There is really this behavior of I want to keep it or I want to throw it away. Rule number 3, less but better, by Dieter Rams. It's almost impossible to talk about industrial design without talking about Dieter Rams and Braun. Dieter Rams' main theory is that great designs requires as little design as possible. What Rams says is that the less you doll up your product, the more you can put the emphasis on the core functionalities, and the less people will be distracted by the non-essentials. For Rams, the only way to make a simple product was to measure every single details. Under Ram's direction at Braun, the products were very economical in terms of color and shapes, which fits really well the vision of Erwin Braun, the founder, who believed that electrical appliances should act as humble servants that should be seen and heard as little as possible. By omitting the unnecessary, not only was the product more simple to apprehend, but also it was longer lasting because it would survive the freckles of the fashion by just remaining focused focus on the core functionality of the product. In software, that means removing features or bundling them or hiding more complex features behind a nested function, or using copywriting to simplify things and making sure they're obvious and understood. It also means killing features that people don't use anymore or don't align with the conception of your product. Rule number 4, have a profound understanding of the materials. This one came from Johnny Ive. Sir Jonathan Paul Ive, also known as Johnny Ive, was the chief design officer at Apple from 1997 to 2019. He worked with Jobs on a lot of innovation at Apple, including the iMac, the iPod, the iPad, and also the Apple Centers and things like that. Ive believed that without a deep-rooted understanding of the materials and the journey from raw state to finished product, there is no way that a designer does an exceptional job. So while Bauhaus says that the form informs the function, what Ive says is that also the materials will have a huge impact on the form and the function that you will deliver from them. When Ive worked on the iPhone 4, he was obsessed with having one piece of stainless steel around the phone. He really wanted that to be a cohesive piece. He also worked months on having this scratchless screen on the front so that this could really resonate with the rest of the device. According to Ive, Apple didn't do anything really magical. They were just sitting and sourcing the best materials and testing out until they were finding out what was the best material to build a functional and delightful product. So in software, what you can have is a really deep understanding of the components at hand. What are the APIs you can use? What are the technologies that exist, such as an AI technology? What are the libraries? It also means you can understand how things are loading. Is it client-side, server-side, etc., etc. Rule number 5, there is no such things as human errors. There is only bad design. This one comes from Don Norman. Donald Arthur Norman, also known as Don Norman, is an American researcher and is very famous for his writings, including the book The Design of Everyday Things. He's also very famous because he created the Nielsen Norman Group. That logo, I'm sure you've seen it before, and worked for well-known agencies such as IDEO. Across his career, Don Norman emphasized on the fact that whenever a user makes a mistake, it's never his fault. It's always the fault of the designer. Knowing that, Don Norman suggested to design for errors, which includes understand the causes of error and design to minimize those causes. Do sensibility checks. Figure out if the action passed the common sense test. Make it possible to reverse action, to undo them, or make it harder to do what cannot be reversed. Make it easier for people to discover the errors when they occur and make them easier to correct, or not treating the actions as the error. Rather, try to help the people complete the actions properly. In software, sensibility checking can be done with user testing, for instance, and with tools like Maze, you can really do that on the spot. The undo also is very popular. It's even including the OS with the command Z function now. And last but not least, highlighting the errors with some error toasters or messages in the context is a great practice you can follow. Bonus learning, break the rules, again from the Bauhaus. The Bauhaus school encouraged a culture of experimentation to discover new things. They tend to tell us that the conventions are here to be learned, but not always to be followed. Some design problems may have very radical solutions that only you believe in. In software, this means experimenting new things, having area and room to prototype and test new technologies, for instance, some hack weeks. That's about it for the 5 learnings that we can all get as product people from industrial design. It feels like the golden age of industrial design is behind us, but there's still a lot of really exciting companies out there like Dyson, and so much more we can learn from it as product people. I'm really excited that I got a chance to dive into some of these principles that I learned and some of these great authors I've seen across the years that have deeply shaped my belief of what is a great product or not. I hope you learned a couple of stuff. If there's some industrial designers that I haven't mentioned that you think are amazing, please let me know. I'd love to include them in my content. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, take care.